I'm 37, and I've been married to my wife for 16 years. We've spent nearly half our lives together, starting from when we were students. Winning her over wasn't easy. I showered her with gifts, planned romantic dates, and went out of my way to surprise her with little thoughtful gestures. Eventually, I succeeded. She fell in love with me too. When we tied the knot, it wasn't just our parents who were over the moon. Our friends were thrilled for us as well. We protected each other fiercely and shared a strong bond. The day my wife told me she was expecting, my mind was consumed with thoughts of our daughter's arrival. I began transforming our home, replacing sports gear with children's toys, and setting up a lovely crib for our baby. The anticipation of becoming a father filled me with joy. I hold a solid position, managing a branch of a large company, which means I spend a considerable amount of time at work, striving to provide a comfortable and fulfilling life for my family. My wife did express her frustration about my late hours, but she understood and saw how dedicated I was to improving our lives. After our daughter was born, I found myself with even less time at home, as a new branch was on the horizon at work, demanding my full attention. Nevertheless, I made a conscious effort to be with my family on weekends, strolling through the park or enjoying a peaceful camping trip. To our friends, we appeared as the ideal couple, often held up as an example for others. As the breadwinner and protector of my family, it brought me great satisfaction to see them want for nothing. My wife and daughter felt secure and shielded from the troubles of the world. I adored my wife and never hesitated to spoil her. Expensive gifts were a norm. Fur coats, a new car, and luxurious vacations abroad several times a year. But then, everything took a turn for the worse after she switched jobs. Suddenly, she started spending more time with colleagues and friends, constantly urging me to join her for parties and social gatherings with her workmates. I trusted her completely and never once questioned her or denied her these outings. In hindsight, this was my fatal mistake. After 12 years of marriage, a void began to grow between us. Our lives had settled into a monotonous routine, much like a train stuck at the same station, following the same track. We had changed over time. Our emotions and the excitement we once felt had faded, replaced by a sense of stability and the certainty that tomorrow would be just like today. Then, a full-blown crisis hit. My wife started complaining that I no longer paid attention to her. We were drifting apart, tangled in daily arguments, accusations, and a feeling of helplessness to change anything. I withdrew into myself, realizing how badly I needed to reset our relationship. It was around then that I noticed how distant my wife had become. Our intimate moments, once a source of joy, had dwindled to a rare, obligatory act. For a long time, I thought the problem was with me, so I made even more of an effort, bringing her flowers and trying to rekindle the romance. I understood why my wife felt frustrated, tired of the monotony. So I did everything I could to bring some excitement back into our lives. At one point, I whisked her and our daughter away on a seaside vacation. It was perfect. We relaxed, enjoyed ourselves, took long walks, laughed, and shared kisses. Our daughter was absolutely overjoyed. But something still felt off with my wife. She kept her phone hidden from me, became increasingly secretive, and started refusing intimacy. A few weeks after we returned, I accidentally discovered that she had been seeing someone else for 6 months. It turned out her lover was a colleague from work. I stumbled upon their text messages and realized that they had already been intimate several times. The shock was unbearable. I had been blissfully unaware, thinking she was still the faithful wife I knew. That day, I felt completely lost. My mind was racing so much that I couldn't even hear my own thoughts. I just stood on the balcony, chain-smoking, staring blankly into the distance. After piecing everything together, I finally confronted my wife. She coldly admitted to the affair and said she was ready to file for divorce. I didn't say a word. I simply kissed my daughter and walked out of the house. I immediately hired a lawyer and a notary to split our assets, and I transferred my share of the apartment to my daughter. I tried to reach out to her lover several times, hoping to have a man-to-man conversation, but he refused to meet, ignoring my calls. Despite my wife's betrayal, I was willing to humble myself, even consider asking him to leave her alone. Though I knew the fault lay with her. If she hadn't wanted this, nothing would have happened. After gathering his personal details, I confronted him after work. The argument escalated into a physical altercation. He threatened to go to the police, but it seems my ex talked him out of it. Meanwhile, she carried on with her life as if nothing had happened, seemingly starting a new relationship, while I was left reeling from the divorce and the sting of her betrayal. My daughter cried constantly, saying she wanted to be with her dad. Whenever I saw my ex, I was overwhelmed with conflicting emotions, hatred, and a lingering love that hadn't completely faded. I was at a loss for how to move forward. Outwardly, I maintained a calm appearance. My job demands that I keep my emotions in check. But inside, I was falling apart. Of course, many might say I should have forgiven her and tried to win her back, but there wasn't the slightest hint of remorse on her part, and I just couldn't get past the betrayal. If things had gone south with her lover and she thought of coming back to me, I honestly don't know what I would have done. It was clear to me that if she betrayed me once, she could do it again, and I might not have the strength to endure a second blow. I could have ended up with a heart attack or some other stress-induced illness. Somewhere along the line, I lost my self-respect and self-worth, and instead, I became a mental masochist. I drowned in an ocean of emotional pain, blaming myself for what happened, for not spending enough time with my family, for not being there when someone else took the place of a man in my wife's heart. I desperately wanted to push these thoughts away, to stop wallowing in self-pity, to finally pull myself together and rediscover how to love again. The real problem was that I put my wife on a pedestal, letting her get away with everything without expecting anything in return. That was a colossal mistake, because she wasn't a little girl. She was an adult woman, a wife, a mother. In the end, she just got bored, which, in hindsight, was inevitable. She wanted the honeymoon phase to last forever, which, for me, was just unrealistic and, frankly, unreasonable. I came to the harsh realization that my wife didn't love or respect me. Maybe that's how it had always been. Marriage was just convenient for her. If things were different, even with the affair, she would have handled it differently. After all, you don't treat someone who was once your partner with such indifference. So I made the decision to start over. I began building a new home, tried to spark new relationships, but my heart just wasn't in it. I eventually gave up. Instead, I threw myself into sports and travel. I climbed mountains, skydived, and took up paragliding. It helped a lot. As long as I was occupied, I felt steady. But as soon as I came home, the emptiness would return. And yet, over time, I managed to remove my ex from my heart. Yes, I went through months of pain and suffering, but eventually, I came to the realization that I needed to love myself first, not the person who had trampled on my feelings. As time passed, my daughter chose to move in with me. She didn't want to stay with a mother who had betrayed us. And then, as if on cue, my ex began reappearing in my life. She started following me on social media, clearly envious of my career success and the fact that I had managed to move on without her. Things didn't work out with her lover. She was eventually fired from that job. Even now, she reaches out, writing and calling with tearful apologies, claiming it was all a mistake, insisting that I'm the only one she loves. But it's far too late for that. I've cut her out of my life, forgiven her, and moved on. She hasn't been mine for a long time. Now, I live for myself, embracing my own happiness, and finally, my life has begun to shine with bright colors again.